Lesson 1-7 has us looking at multiplying rational numbers. And when we say rational numbers, what we really mean are numbers that could be written as fractions or decimals. So you're going to need to brush up on your multiplication of fractions and decimals. The good news is that the rules that apply to multiplication with integers also applies to multiplication with rational numbers. For this lesson, our focus is going to be on the actual computation piece. The good news is that multiplication with rational numbers, or fractions and decimals, that are positive and negative are going to follow the same rules as they did for multiplication with integers. So the great part is you don't have any new rules to learn. In this lesson, you just have to remember how to multiply fractions and how to multiply decimals. Take a look at this try it. This is the one that goes with example 1. Megan's bank account is charged $9.95 per month for an online newspaper subscription. How could you represent the change in her account balance after 3 months of charges? So as you look at the number line, you're seeing 3 groups of $9.95. So what we're looking for there is how much has her account been charged for all 3 of those months of this subscription. To solve this problem, we need to multiply $9.95 times the 3 months that Megan was charged. Here is the computation that happens when you multiply that decimal times 3. Note that there are 2 decimal places in your number, which means there should be 2 decimal places in your answer. So the decimal point goes right here between the 9 and the 8. Since these are amounts that she was charged, the total amount taken out of her bank account is $29.85, which is represented by a negative $29.85. In example 3, they show us a multiplication that includes both a decimal and a fraction. The key idea here is that you're going to have to convert one of those rational numbers so that they are either both fractions or both decimals. You'll have to decide based on your numbers which is easier for you to compute. If you look down at the 4 try it questions, you'll see that you have a mixture of different types of rational numbers that you're multiplying. You have fractions, you have decimals, and you have mixed numbers. So the idea here is use the strategies that you know about multiplying decimals and multiplying fractions and mixed numbers to solve each of those. For try it problem A, you're simply multiplying your decimals. Don't forget that the rule for rational numbers is the same as the rule for integers. So a negative times a negative is still going to yield a positive answer. In this case, the answer is a positive 13 78/100. Remember, there is 1 decimal place in the first number, and there is 1 decimal place in the second number, so your product is going to have 2 decimal places. For question part B, you're going to want to change that mixed number 4 1/6 into an improper fraction before you multiply. Then you're going to use your rules for multiplication, which say to multiply your numerators and multiply your denominators. Then you're going to simplify and make sure that you put it in proper fraction or mixed number form. Since a negative times a positive yields a negative answer, my final answer in simplified form is a negative 2 1/2. Now try letter C and letter D and come back and check your answers to see if you did them correctly. For part C, a positive 2/10 times a negative 1 78/100 is going to yield a negative answer because positive times negative is still negative. Don't forget that you have 2 decimal places in the 1 78/100. You have 1 decimal place in the 2/10, so that means your answer should have 3 decimal places. For part D, I chose to change the negative 7/10 from a fraction into a decimal. Multiplying those decimals is fairly easy, and it eliminates the hassle of changing that negative 2 5/10 into an improper fraction. Since you have negative times negative, your answer will be positive. In this case, a positive 1 75/100. Notice in your key concept that the rules for multiplication are the same even if you have rational numbers instead of just integers. Try question 5 and come back and check your answer. There are only 2 positive products in that list. Both of them show a negative rational number times another negative rational number. Now I'd like for you to try some on your own. You don't necessarily have to do all of the questions from 7 to 14, but pick the ones that you think are probably going to cause you the most distress, the most trouble, the ones that are hardest, and try those first. I'm going to come back in just a moment, and I will have all of the problems worked out with answers for you to check. Okay, so here you have answers for 7 through 14. Notice on, number 11, where you have a decimal and a mixed number being multiplied together, I chose on this one to change the negative 2 3/4 to negative 2 75/100. That's an easy switch to make to a decimal, and it doesn't make the multiplication that much more difficult. But when you look at 13, I actually opted to change the 2/10 from its decimal form into its fraction form. And the reason I did that on that problem was because changing a negative 5/6 into a decimal ends up being a repeating decimal. And since I already know that that's going to be repeating, I don't want to mess with a repeating decimal because I can't really compute with that. There is no ending to it, remember. So it's easier to change that 2/10 back into its fraction form and then use your multiplication of fractions to solve that. So go ahead and take a moment to check your answers. Let me know if you need help with anything. Here's another kind of problem with rational numbers. So you'll see in this one you've got some information over here. Oops, hang on. You've got some information over here in the picture that you're going to be using to solve this problem. And this is more of a problem solving. So I'm going to go ahead and work this out while you're working it out and then come back and check your answer. So pause the video and then check your answer when you're done. All right, go ahead and check your answer to this one. And then we'll go on to the next page. On this page, I just want you to focus on number 16. Pause the video while you try this one and then come back and check your answer. All right, check your answer to number 16 and then we'll go on to the next page. Try questions 19 and 20. Pause the video while you do this and then come back and check your answer. All right, there's number 19. Notice that I chose to change the negative 2 1/4 to a decimal before I multiplied, and it's negative times positive, so your answer is negative. And go ahead and take a look at question 20 and parts A and B that go with that. And I think you're ready to get started on your assignment, which is in your Pearson Realize account.